Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 16th of July 2024. We're going to start in our military aid and equipment video with the USA fearing the spread of war beyond the borders of Ukraine when it comes to the authorization of ATACMS strikes on Russian territory, according to Pat Ryder. Quote, "We don't want to see unintended consequences and escalation that could turn this conflict into a wider one." So it's been widely reported recently that, well, not reported, you've had spokespeople saying very clearly that they are worried about escalation, and that's the reason why the Americans are not allowing the Ukrainians to strike Russian air bases with longer range missiles. Indeed, this is some good questioning, and we're going to play this through. We're going to join the Department of Security, is it? Spokesperson.
Reports you're referring to, but I will say that we had incredibly productive discussions with President Zelensky and with other members of the Ukrainian government when they were here last week for the Washington summit. And as part of those discussions, we talked about NATO's irreversible path to NATO, and Ukraine's irreversible path to NATO and the progress that they are making along that path. We talked about the delivery of F-16s to Ukraine, which is underway. We talked about the fact that we are providing them additional air defense systems, something that President Zelensky had specifically asked for, and that we were able to do both from our own stocks and from marshaling the coalition that we have assembled all around the world. With respect to the question, the president actually got this question at his press conference last week and spoke to it quite directly. We have allowed Ukraine to use American-made weapons, American-provided weapons, to strike just across the border where they are taking incoming fire from Russia, but we have decided at this point not to expand beyond that. But that said, you just look at the actions I outlined a moment ago that we took last week, and add those to the actions we have taken for the past 2+ years to support the defense of Ukraine. And I think the suggestion that we are somehow not committed to Ukraine's defense is in every way belied by the actual facts and our actual record.
When the president was asked about that, his response was about the capabilities to strike Moscow. That's not what we're talking about. The question is, why not allow them to strike launch sites?
We have decided that that is not an appropriate step for the United States to take now at this time. But that doesn't change the fact that we have provided Ukraine with significant capabilities to launch attacks against the Russian troops that are that continue their aggression against Ukraine, that we have provided them with the ability to strike across the border, and of course that we have provided them significant air defenses, which really is what we're talking about here. When you have this question about strike,
it's not what you're talking about. You have been asked to talk about striking air bases further into the country that are allowing those aircraft to take off and drop bombs on civilians. You know, that is not what you are allowing to be struck.
Strikes inside Russia. A lot of it relates to Russia's ability to launch assaults that then, missiles and other weapons, drones and other things that then land inside Ukraine. So we have provided them with air defenses to help repel those attacks.
We've provided them with a sticking plaster rather than a cure. And that's that. I think that's wholly underwhelming as a response and simply not good enough. Now, talking about the US here, this is interesting observation that we see where the money for these big Ukraine aid bills actually goes. US Air Force just got $103 million in additional procurement money from the 4th Ukraine Supplemental to buy new Joint Strike missiles to replace old HARMs, so the anti-radiation missiles, provided to Ukraine. Just one of the many examples of how these supplementals and drawdowns are rebuilding a decrepit US military. So if you want to convince someone who's sitting on a fence of the rationale behind giving Ukraine aid packages, this goes some way to that, and hopefully will put paid to the idea that you're just taking like $60 billion of cash out of a bank and then sending it in a briefcase to Zelensky. This is money that is being spent on the US military to upgrade the US military by giving older missiles and equipment and munitions to Ukraine. The USAF 2025 base budget requested for the JSM is $166 million in support of 50 missiles, but it notes that if additional funds become available, the buy could increase. The inventory objective is 240 missiles, though the AF forecasts procuring 268 through financial year 28, likely in support of ongoing integration testing. So, goodness me, expensive missiles, right? But the US is getting better missiles by giving away the older ones to the Ukrainians. So that money kind of is just expediting an improvement of the US armed forces. It's not money going to Ukraine in that kind of simplistic manner that many claim it is. Spain will send 10 Leopard 2A4 tanks to Ukraine that were repaired and modernized in the Santa Barbara Sistemas factory in Sevilla. In addition to battle tanks, various backhoe loaders, and a significant number of anti-tank missiles were sent as well. Thank you, Spain. Indeed, I think they are fully on their way. 10 plus Leopard 2A4 tanks coming from Spain. This is literally the first delivery of tanks to Ukraine in many months. We expect another batch of Spanish tanks before 2024 is over. So good stuff there. Then moving on, Portugal's $220 million of aid. The aid package for Ukraine is to be repeated next year. That's good news. However, Portugal is very much on the low side of percentage of GDP on defence and helping Ukraine. But nonetheless, good news that there is going to be some continued aid there. This is interesting. So media demonstrating an ex-British CVRT Spartan on its way to Ukraine. The ability to move small combat vehicles like the CVRT using common road transport, not low loaders, makes them strategically very deployable. So it's great to see that you can logistically move some of this kit around, even tracked vehicles around, by just whacking them in the back of a lorry, because some of them are small enough. Good news, and that makes it much easier to get these things to where they need to be. Czech-made Victor MR2 anti-aircraft system joins Ukraine's mobile fire groups. It features twin 14.5mm KPV machine guns mounted on a Toyota Land Cruiser 70 chassis, explains a senior officer of the Air Defence Combat Training. Now, I showed you a picture, goodness me, it must be, 6 months ago plus, of a whole host of these driving down a motorway in Ukraine with kind of tarpaulin on the back covering the gun. So
Зенітні комплекси Віктор.
These have been in Ukraine, I think, for some time, but I assume that they've been training on them and now they can get them out into the field to help shoot down drones and cruise missiles and whatnot. This just adds to Ukraine's capabilities going forward, and not just capability but capacity to broaden the air defense network coverage across the whole of the country. There were quite a few of these were given. I don't know, it doesn't mention numbers there though. German Aid to Ukraine says on my latest piece, he talks about the Bavarian defense startup Donnerstal has announced that it will donate mouse loitering munition platforms to Ukraine, with the first user being the special unit HURMO Kraken, so special forces, of the main directorate of intelligence. So a German startup company providing some more drones there. Yes, wasn't it that using wood makes it 75% cheaper than carbon, not the 25% mentioned in the article? It seems so little. So, wow, some of those drones are being made out of wood, which kind of makes sense because it's not going to be featuring on the radar, and it might be just cheaper than making it out of molds, so plastic molds. So when you're using drones, all they need to be is cheap and light and effective. And if you can do that even more cheaply by using wood rather than plastic, then so be it. Here we see a lot of anti-tank mines being prepared for dropping from drones, and we've seen Wild Hornets do this with their drones being able to carry almost 10 kilograms of mines. I saw a lot of these, says Chris Miller from the Financial Times, a lot of these anti-tank mines and other munitions being turned into explosives for use with Ukrainian FPV drones in a makeshift underground arms factory near the Donbass frontline recently. And these are his photos. Just incredible. But also, yeah, look at those artillery rounds being, I don't know, used somehow. I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, bit of an arms factory underground here. Being used for all sorts. Yes, moving on. We have mobilization is apparently going according to plan, but there are not enough training facilities, says President Zelensky. Quote, considering training facilities, there are not enough of them. They are already being expanded, Zelensky said during a press conference. So the idea is that the mobilization is picking up. The Ukrainians are managing to mobilize at least some people. Is it enough? Who knows? But the main drawback is the lack of training facility capacity. And Zelensky said that allowing Ukraine to strike with long-range weapons inside Russia is still an unpopular decision among the allies. So Ukraine is developing its own deep strike capabilities, including drones. Now, I assume they're a long way into that and they haven't just started doing that given what America has just said. But yeah, I don't know for sure. I would assume that they'd be working on long-range strike capabilities. They've been working on that for years. I was saying this the other day, that possibly the US is feeling okay with saying, no, you can't hit those air bases because Ukraine is just about to come out with some indigenous weaponry, which means that the US doesn't need to do something that they see as too escalatory because it's okay. The Ukrainians have their own version. But that's just my speculation. Goodness me, it could be like still a year or two off, and that's obviously not good enough. Now, I know this is concerning the UK defence situation at the moment, but this is actually, I think, important to note because it pertains to all militaries who are having to reassess where their militaries are at, judging by what they are seeing coming from the battlefields of Ukraine. So Shashank Joshi from The Economist says Labour, as in our UK's government, announces a root and branch defence review overseen by Healey, so that's our defence secretary, but headed by Lord Robertson. So he's previously the ex-defence secretary and NATO secretary general. Two other external reviewers, Richard Barrons, he's excellent, and Fiona Hill, she's excellent. Interesting, Fiona Hill, who was very much to do with previous American US administrations. She's British, but she must have US residency, does she? Anyway, promises to listen to views and voices from all parties. Final report is mid-2025. So it sounds like a long time, but actually they're going to properly review the entirety of the US Armed Forces strategically to work out what we need to do, where we need to go, what is the future of warfare. Really, really important. The great thing about this is they're getting people who know their onions. So Richard Barrons, I'm not sure about Fiona Hill in terms of military, though I think she knows her stuff with regards to international security and whatnot. Lord Robertson, obviously previous Defence Secretary and NATO Secretary General, so he will know his stuff. Richard Barrons is excellent, and I think John Healey has started well in his job. In fact, Robert Johnson here says the UK government has announced the commencement of a consultative defence review. This is a good step. They've chosen a triumvirate with experience, authority and technical expertise. The consultation will be valuable if it is heeded. There are some risks. The risk is that nostalgia for the halcyon days of the 1990s, including affection for the 1998 defence review, will mean that the full range of threats are overlooked. I'm not talking about the threats posed by Russia, China, Iran and DPRK. Her Majesty's government will have to address the double standards of EU trade with Russia and potentially Trump's plans for NATO. Whilst seeking to be close to European allies is sound, it will not be enough. A point Poland has realised: the UK will need to enhance its conventional defences. In the next few years, we will see a diminution of US military support for Europe, either steadily or slowly. It is imperative that the UK addresses the inefficiency of its procurement and regenerates the Royal Navy and Royal Air Force, modernises the army and devises a national defence plan for the eventuality of a possible Article 5 invocation. That is, I think, is good news for the UK, but you'll be finding that all nations that are helping Ukraine in this war will be doing this consistently, and they will need like full root and branch reviews, because I think the evolution of this war has shown that, you know, what we were expecting of warfare 5 years ago is not what we would expect now. And take, for example, the UK's approach to drone R&D and procurement, and we're still looking at these massive Reaper type drones, which do have a place, right? But actually, drones now, the use of drones has evolved massively, and we're at a point where there's such a variety of drones. You know, horses for courses, different drones for different missions and different capabilities, that actually we don't need to be spending gazillions on a couple of really big drones. We need to be doing R&D on, and we are doing that, and that's why we're heading the Drone Coalition. It's not that we're doing that for Ukraine. We are doing that to put ourselves in the best position going forward to provide our own armed forces with the best drone capabilities that are reactions to what is going on the battlefields in Ukraine. So good news for the UK. Expect to see this happen quite a lot across allied nations. And then we're going to go on to this last of all. US believes that Russia is passing US weapons data to China, according to Reuters. A congressman cite media reports and think tanks about China's support for Russia's military industry and an alarming level of Russian adaptation that has undermined the effectiveness of several unmanned US weapons systems. And they might be getting some help there from Russia to overcome those US systems. So this is a US House Select Committee on China, in a letter to Jake Sullivan, have called for determining what data on countering US weapons Russia may well be passing to China. Jens Stoltenberg said that China is providing Russia with dual-use equipment and microelectronics. What is China getting back in return? And that's obviously a big worry. Anyway, that's enough from me. Really appreciate your support. Please like, subscribe, and share, and do all those things that YouTubers often ask for. I appreciate them, I think. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.